1-0 Is It Phoenix does take game one. Now, going to sideboards, John Rosum's going to get to interact a bit more with these spells.
Yeah, one big thing that you like out of the sideboard of Jeskai is they're bringing in copies of Baneslayer Angel and Lyra Dawnbringer. If you can get yourself to a situation where you stabilize with that, that certainly swings the game against these red decks.
It's like the idea, it kind of feels to me like you can't, a lot of times Jeskai wants to win the game on turn infinity, and that's actually really hard to do in this matchup.
Yes. Yeah, the Phoenix deck is just so good going long if you're not able to exile the Phoenix. Rosum does have a couple copies of Surgical Extraction in the sideboard, which can play in a big way in the matchup. There's also some Celestial Purges. I believe that this is the Brad Nelson, a.k.a. Benjamin Nikolic build of Jeskai.
Yeah, looks like Silas does have right here, or on his next turn, Rosum's looking at the graveyard that was put into, the cards put in there, as he does have a copy of Surgical Extraction in the hand.
In general, you mostly want to wait for Phoenixes in this matchup. Though if you have a read, you can go for Surgical earlier, or if you have a Snapcaster Mage, that'll inform you about the way where you first use Surgical, you see their hand, then you can Snapcaster and use Surgical on something that you know is in their hand later.
Looks like Rosum was pausing Silas on the fetch land and decides to let him have it. Rosum's hand at the moment, we have Path to Exile, Dispel, Surgical Extraction, a couple more lands. As Thing in the Ice is the play here by Silas Waltzer.
Yeah, there was one in the graveyard.
Yeah, that's the first thing I noticed too.
Though Rosum did have the Path to Exile, so pretty easy to clean up one threat in this matchup. What the Phoenix deck is going to try to do here is continue to check Rosum for Path to Exiles as we go through the game. Additional copies of Thing in the Ice, Arclight Phoenix, which is a creature that has a way of coming back from the graveyard.
Celestial Colonnade for John Rosum. He shuffles a Lightning Helix up to the front of his hand. I'm a bit surprised to see that card still in the deck. Is there something he's going for particularly?
So what it boils down to is you have a few cards you want to bring in, and you have a number of cards you want to bring out. You have a combination of so many Lightning Bolts and Lightning Helixes, you have to leave some in. And the pacing of the matchup, the Phoenix deck not being a one-drop deck, it's generally doing its things on turns 2 and 3. The Helix gaining life matters more than Lightning Bolt costing a 1.
Yeah, I'm looking at the creatures, right, because Thing in the Ice is an O4, Crackling Drake's an X4. There are 2 Monastery Swift Spears in here, and I guess the 4 Arclight Phoenixes, but it feels like these Helixes are going to go upstairs more often than not.
Yeah, you may have a Phoenix to buy some time. There's a lot of games where Waltzer is just going to cast Arclight Phoenix from hand. Maybe not a lot, but it happens enough of the time, and then you Helix it into the graveyard, that's when you get to Surgical Extraction it, things like that.
Serum Visions from Silas into Faithless Looting. A lot of cantrips here. So you see him pitch a couple of lands, then passes. And Rosum deciding whether it's thinking about a Lightning Helix, but went to untap and now thinking better of it.
I think he's thinking about just cracking the Scalding Tarn. I don't believe there's a 4th land already available in the hand. Yeah, the Helix, you're just going to sit on it because sometimes you hit a Phoenix before it hits you, and it matters.
If we're getting to the point where it needs to go upstairs, there's no rush.
Right. It'll be just as easy to do that on this turn.
No land for Rosum. Picks up Search for Azcanta. Search, Supreme Verdict, Teferi, Lightning Helix, Surgical Extraction. A lot of tools, but no lands. He'll pass to Waltzer.
Yeah, he had to take down Lightning Helix to cast the Search. I think that's well worth it. He also has Surgical Extraction in hand already, so any Phoenix coming out of the graveyard, he'll have that covered, barring Waltzer having something like Dispel Spell Pierce.
And chart a course from Waltzer, but the hand is really turning up to be a weird one as he discards Faithless Looting, finds no land. It looks like he has Spell Pierce and a stack of Faithless Lootings and Lightning Bolts.
And it is kind of funny the way Spell Pierce plays in this matchup. Generally, Spell Pierce can get really poor if you're not coming out of the gates quickly in the Jeskai matchup, but Rosum missing land drops gives it a little bit more longevity here.
Flashback Faithless Looting from Waltzer. His draw for the turn was a copy of Lightning Axe. So he finds Ralzeric and a land.
Yes, the Lightning Axe and also the Ralzeric coming off there. Because Waltzer knows that Baneslayer Angel, Lyra Dawnbringer, these are part of the plan for the Jeskai deck, having answers to that is a pretty big deal.
And Rosum going to mill over and electrolyze and hits land number 5. Is he going to jam the Teferi? Waltzer, as we remember, does have that Spell Pierce up.
I believe that Rosum has been hanging on to a Dispel, which is a strong argument to get to 6 mana before you Teferi. Or if you're worried about specifically Dispel, or Spell Pierce rather, just getting to 7 mana and casting it through that.
Yeah, I guess the game is very much under control here with Search for Azcanta in play. There's not really a rush on John Rosum to do anything.
Now, here's an interesting 5-mana Planeswalker question is on Silas' side.
Right.
Do you just want to run Rael Zarek out here? Or rather, Rael is it Viceroy?
Yeah. I mean, you expect it would get Cryptic commanded, right? But maybe that's fine.
Right. Yeah, depending on what else you have going on. In general, though, Counterspell is not very powerful in the matchup.
Well, here's that hardcast Arclight Phoenix, and now Rosum, rewarded for hanging on to Lightning Helix, puts the 3-2 into the graveyard. And you mentioned this is the premier target for Surgical Extraction.
Yes. Rosum with mana available to pay for Spell Pierce here as well.
That's exactly what he's going to do. And also here he's going to get a look at Waltzer's hand, which feels pretty important.
Yeah, he'll be able to see this and get an idea of what he wants to do with Teferi on the future turns.
So Rael Zarek, Lightning Axe, Spell Pierce, Manamorphose, and 2 Lightning Bolts are the cards.
Yeah, this hand is not terribly exciting. Lightning Bolt pretty weak in the matchup on the Phoenix side of things. Pretty much just going upstairs with those, largely just to trigger Phoenixes, and the Phoenixes are getting surgicaled. There's still spells they count towards transforming Thing in the Ice, so if we ever produce one of those, get to that phase in the game.
Yeah, there's still 3 Crackling Drakes.
Yeah, they add some power there. If you ever get to a Rail emblem,
then they're
Lightning
great.
Bolt does a lot of damage, draws you some cards for your trouble.
Yeah, we get to the Rael. We'll have to figure out a way to win with the Rael emblem.
I've had that emblem a few times, and it feels pretty nice.
Remember, this is all on Silas' turn. He sees the Spell Pierce and knows that's the only blue card. It's giving Rosum an opening to go for a Teferi.
It looks like 6 cards in the graveyard for Rosum, so if he can bin something with the search and draw a land, that'll get him up to 7.
Draws 2nd Teferi.
That's quite a bit less good than drawing a land, but it does allow him just run one out this turn, and then run the other one out the following turn after he gets Spell Pierced. Actually, no, Rosum has Dispel at the ready, so you can just go for that.
Dispels the Spell Pierce. Now, he gets his Teferi and he gets to draw a card. John Rossum's last card is Supreme Verdict, and he knows that he's gonna hit an a Rael Zarek on the other side on the way back.
There's a Rael or Waltzer can just throw those 2 Lightning Bolts at the Teferi, clean that problem up.
Yeah. Rosum draws. It's another Colonnade untapped. So his hand is, correction, Supreme Verdict and a Teferi.
The thing about Rael is it only hits creatures with its -3, so it's not great in the heads-up fight against Teferis. So this is not the most exciting use of a turn for Silas.
Yeah, Rael and Teferi, pretty similar Planeswalkers in terms of their abilities, but yeah, that -3, Rael's can't go to Planeswalker, whereas Teferi's can.
Right, yeah, Teferi can just tuck away the Rael if Rosum sees it as a problem. Rael does start with a lot of loyalty, so it means it's not vulnerable to something like Celestial Colonnade, really. You have to combine something else to deal with it that way, but Teferi is quite a strong answer in the heads-up matchup of Rael versus Teferi.
Yeah. So Silas has to pick between making Rael and double bolting. He's going to go ahead and make the Rael Zarek. So, +1, it goes up to 6. Dispel and Manamorphose top cards. So put the Dispel in his hand and Manamorphose in the graveyard.
Based off the angles here, it looks like Silas is revealing those cards. You can look at them. Your opponent doesn't get to know what you pick off of Rael.
Okay.
That is worth noting.
And he actually is not going to leave up that Dispel instead of bolting the Teferi.
Yeah, just 1 Lightning Bolt is pretty whatever.
Yeah, I mean, his worry, like, if he didn't know about the second Teferi, he could try to keep it off a -3.
Right.
And Rosum, a -3, he'll tuck away the Rael Zarek. The Rael is it Viceroy. So it's under 2 cards.
And this is actually still fine. You know, getting the rail tucked away, again, outside of actually getting up to the emblem, which seems kind of unrealistic in the matchup, the rail doesn't amount to a ton in the matchup. Cleaning up the Teferi with the bolt there gets the board clear for a turn for Waltzer.
Waltzer draws Opt, which actually means he has the mana here. He can go get the Teferi. The rail is it Viceroy again. Can Opt scry to the bottom. Between that Opt and the Manamorphose, he should be good.
Yeah, pretty free to just start on Opt 2. If there's a card you like on top, well, just draw it and then do something with that card.
Silas will start on Manamorphose. Draws into another Lightning Bolt. 2 mana available.
Yeah, being proactive with Manamorphose once the Phoenix is out of your deck, it just kind of makes sense to cast that card as soon as you draw it.
3 Lightning Bolts in hand for Waltzer. He's got this Opt. 2 mana floating.
This is always so discouraging when you get to this phase in the game and your hand is 3 Lightning Bolts, and combined, that's less than half of your opponent's life total.
Yeah, now, instead of going for that Ral as a Viceroy, he just actually passed the turn, and Rosum's as canting here.
Once again, welcome to your next
looking
round.
at what he's trying to set up, that's an interesting one.
So if you have to opt into it, that means that you only have 5 mana for the rail, and you have to take down the Dispel that he picked up.
Okay.
If you have to fight over something like a Cryptic Command, that Dispel would be very valuable on that turn.
Sure.
Rosum's hand relatively light on resources in the short term. You mentioned that it's gone to the Sunken Rune. That's going to change over time. But there's not a huge sense of immediacy on Waltzer's end.
And plus as the Teferi. Here's 1 bolt. Here's another bolt. Teferi is down. Silas has gone through 3 Lightning Bolts. His hand is Opt, Dispel, Lightning Axe. But Rosum's winning the card economy game with this Escanta.
The Waltzer should be able to produce Rail on the following turn, start accruing some card advantage with that.
This is interesting when Ral versus the Escanta. Seeing where that one goes. Here's going to be the Ral with Dispel backup.
Yeah, both cards pretty reasonable card selection. Not really upside for Rail being able to find creatures. Crackling Drake quite a bit worse than something like Snapcaster Mage out of Rosum.
Right.
But it's at least a threat. On the topic of Crackling Drake, though, if Waltzer spends some turns plussing this Rail, his Arc-like Phoenixes have already been hit by Surgical Extraction. There's a real concern about his deck having enough gas to actually close a game.
Right.
The Rail is going to have to fight some Celestial Colonnades. Rosum's deck has Electrolyzes in it, probably additional Lightning Helixes, at least 1 or 2 still in, and then Snapcaster Mage to really wear away at the Rail. And meanwhile, Waltzer's just losing 3 cards from his deck every turn. Draw Step, activation of Rail. His stuff like Manamorphose now just makes his deck a little bit smaller. Thought Scour, he's got a bunch of Faithless Lootings.
Yeah, so, I mean, if a Crackling Drake gets countered and snaps Surgical, you're worried about Silas' ability to actually win?
I'm worried about resolving Drakes and still having enough to win. There's stuff like this, Celestial Purge, Path to Exiles.
Yeah, Purge hits it by Dispel, but John Rosum dispels back. Seen out by Silas. Yeah, there is some real concern here. Another concern, I'm going to glance an eye over toward the clock here between the 2 players as well. It looks like we're heading toward a game number 3, and especially on Jeskai control side, you're going to see things pick up.
Yes, it's going to be pretty difficult for Rosum to close an entire match from here. Yeah, he is the player down a game. So he has to win this one where he has the advantage in this game.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have any closing speed.
Here's Crackling Drake. Rosum going to let that one resolve. He has Escanta. Last time I found him a Hieroglyphic Illumination. This time looks like it's going to find him a Teferi. That's all well and good. Drake draws Silas a card. Now there's a lot of instance in that graveyard. On Rosum's side, he likely just has to Supreme Verdict this away.
Yes. Start there, or you can just Teferi and tuck it and figure out things from there.
Teferi's going to plus, draws Rosum a card, draws into Electrolyze. Here is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's Supreme Verdict. Crackling Drake is gone. Rosum can untap 2, and then one of those 2 will be the Escanta, and he passes back.
Yeah, so really accruing some strong advantage on his end. Waltzer did pick up a Thing in the Ice and did not overcommit in the Supreme Verdict, so he has this tool here, but Thing is so unlikely to matter against Teferi.
Yeah, it is Silas's threat for the turn, however. Makes Thing in the Ice. 3 mana. Looks like he'll go toward a Faithless Looting out of the graveyard. This Thing ticks down to 3. But yeah, you mentioned some pressure on Path to Exiles in this matchup.
Yeah, though once we get to this stage in the game, Teferi does a good Path to Exile impression. Supreme Verdict also covers Thing in the Ice, and the Arclight Phoenixes have been exiled, so there's less pressure to hold on to Path to Exile. It's kind of when the full deck is together, but as the game progresses, that becomes less true.
So with the clock as it is, a question I have is, how does John actually win?
He's building up to a Teferi emblem here. The resistance to that is fairly minimal. Waltzer has to do things like spend more lightning bolts, but he's already been through a number of those. It's pretty tough to actually take care of the Teferi. And theoretically, a Game 3 could just be a runaway with a Baneslayer Angel or Lyra Dawnbringer on Rosum's side.
Yeah.
It is tough, though.
Looks like Electrolyze to deal the first 2 damage to Thing in the Ice from Rosum. Assume there's going to be a follow-up. And another Electrolyze deals the remaining 2. A Dispel from Silas. Rosum's going to have none of that. He has a copy of Logic Knot to counter the Dispel. And Thing in the Ice is down. Rosum draws, makes a land drop, and untaps 2. We'll pass it. He does also have, I believe, 2 Colonnades in play.
Yes, yeah, that can close the game fairly quickly. Teferi's already at 6, though. It's pretty easy to get a concession at this point if Waltzer's serious about finishing the match, and that's what's happening here. We're going to Game 3.
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of situation where if in a Game 3, Waltzer may make him play it out, but the clock, there's still enough clock that they're going to both try to get the full match in.
Right. And in Waltzer's deck, it's not like he has to come out of the gates really quickly and destroy the Jeskai deck there. You saw there's some permissive elements there, his own Dispels, Spell Pierces. He can kind of claw into him mid-game, and if he's able to fight over Surgical Extraction or not have his Phoenixes all exiled, then that's a nice value engine that can push the game further along and have him actually win a long game over time. But 10 minutes, it's a little bit stressful with this amount of time, but I think they should be able to close a good number of the games in this matchup.
Yeah, certainly it's enough on time on Silas' side. On Jonathan's side, do you see him reboarding at all out of respect for the clock?
It's possible that he wasn't on the Angel package in that game. We didn't see any.
Yeah. If he's not, you'd think he'd want to move toward. He may move toward it for this.
Yeah, it closes a lot faster. Or it could be the opposite as well. We didn't see them, but we did see as Waltzer show us that rail.
Yeah.
Saw things like Lightning Axe available. I don't know if Rosum was privy to that.
So we talked about our holiday sale at StarCityGames.com. You can also give the gift of SCG. What is that gift? Well, it is plenty of things over at the SCG store. We have gift packs available for the holidays here for the holiday season. You can find them at StarCityGames.com/merch. Also lots of sleeves, hoodies, and different elements of the creature collection.
The Tarmodai is a nice stocking stuffer.
Did the Tarmodai come into play in the Junderdome?
It did not. Basically, anytime I'm playing Tarmogoyf, I ask about 3 times every turn cycle how big it is.
It sounds like you could have used a Tarmodai.
Yes. So I'm hoping to get one this holiday season. Every Magic player in your life, Junderdome competitors and F&M players alike can use a Tarmodai to track all their Lurgoyf needs.
Game number 3 here for both players. Rosum on the draw this time. Just over 8 minutes here for our third game. Looks like you have a keep on both sides. Start off on Waltzer's side. Now, I was a bit surprised if Swiftspear swings in for 1 to see Lightning Axe still in the deck after game 1.
I think it's just both of these decks. We saw top 8 last weekend, and this Angel package is nothing new. Rosum is a known associate of Benjamin Nikolic. Brad Nelson top 8 with Nikolic's list. Lyra Dawnbringer, Baneslayer Angel. Pretty common technology for these players.
Turn 2, Manamorphose to Prowess from Silas Waltzer. He's going to go ahead and opt here. Now, he drew Monastery Swiftspear for the turn, but didn't want to commit a second Swiftspear.
Well, it's possible he either already has a Looting or already has a Phoenix and is looking for the other copy. Or had both. Hey,
yeah, there's Arclight Phoenix and a land. This was a nice turn. So we have 3 spells, and John Rosum's going to surgical that one away.
No fun allowed.
Yeah.
And Waltzer definitely wishing he cast the Swift Spear at this point in time.
Yeah, he went for the higher upside line. It did check Rosum for surgical.
Right.
Rosum with 2 copies in the sideboard. Has managed to hit the Arclight Phoenixes both games. Now, Rosum has taken some pretty big damage here. He took 2 off the surgical extraction, and that Monster Swift Spear hit him for 4. Coupled with his fetch land and the hit from last turn, he's down to 12.
Yep, a lot of damage. It's going to be a big check to see if he can produce a Lightning Helix or at least something similar to dispatch the Swift Spear here. Lightning Helix would be the best possible as it gains life. Definitely if he had access to his basic plains or his Glacial Fortress.
Yeah, right now Silas's hand is 2 lands, a second Swift Spear, and a Lightning Bolt. Now he does have a Faithless Looting in the graveyard to clean it up.
Right, and Jeskai is not really the best at punishing you for spending turns doing things like that, but
yeah,
that's a good combination. Basic Plains Lightning Helix.
I believe we referred to it as best possible.
Best possible. Glacial Fortress would be slightly better.
That's true. I think he'll take it. He's up to 15.
Yeah, he'll definitely take it.
Here is Swift Spear Serum Visions.
Draws Thing in the Ice, scries 2 Thing in the Ice. Is he keeping 2 things? It was at least 1.
All right. Hits Rosum to 13 and passes. I mean, Thing in the Ice seems pretty decent on this board. It's one of the only threats he has left.
Yeah, that's true. You do have to actually close the game.
And Rosum says, I don't care that you scried to the top. Here's Field of Ruin. We're shuffling.
Right. Or, I care a lot that you scried to the top. Why don't you shuffle your deck?
I'm willing to spend some of my main phase mana to get you to shuffle.
So, Waltzer does have Faithless Looting in the graveyard, but I feel like Rosum is doing a little bit of a favor here. I think three Thing in the Ice, it's really tough to transform them. That's a lot of cards that aren't instants and sorceries.
He's saving him from himself?
Right.
Land 4 here from Waltzer. Swings in Rosum to 12. He does have 1 copy of Thing in the Ice. Bolt and a land are in his hand. Because of that Faithless Looting in his yard, I don't think I want to make any more land drops.
No, especially now that the Phoenixes have been exiled. Lands are what you're looking at discarding.
Back to Rosum we go. Check on something like Supreme Verdict. Not only he doesn't have the second white, so we don't know. He's holding up Negate, it looks like. Snapcaster Mage in hand.
Hey, what's going on with that Snapcaster Mage?
It's for SCGCon Winter. It's in the snow.
Does he have one for every season?
Yeah, in summer they'll all be in swimsuits.
Can see the sunny beaches of Innistrad.
Swift Spear attacks in.
And I like Rosum just taking the damage here, not going for anything like a Snapcaster block or the Lightning Helix. He has some life to play with. Going to 12 here is pretty comfortable. And if there's no pumps here, then it's pretty easy to just do this end step.
Here is one of those Izzet Charms. It's the one of Izzet Charm, rather.
Attention Magic players, this is a must call.
And
For registration,
he does spend it to shock Snapcaster Mage. And now bolts.
Yeah, so this is a response to Lightning Helix. So this is 2 prowess triggers. The Swift Spear will survive here.
I like it a lot.
Waltzer's out now.
Yep.
He's got Faithless Looting in the graveyard. A little bit surprised that he played a land on that turn.
Yeah, he may want that one back. We'll see, though. Right now, Rosum's hand is a Negate and 2 or maybe 3 lands.
Yeah, it does not do anything about the battlefield.
Yeah, Waltzer will be able to clean that one up pretty quickly. This Thing in the Ice, when it transforms, will close quickly.
And there's a lot of combinations of top 3 cards of Waltzer's deck that can make that happen, though. If he flashes back Faithless Looting, that's very likely to get the Negate.
Right.
But if Waltzer draws any instant for his draw step, or any instant or sorcery, rather, something like a Serum Visions would be excellent.
Draws a land. That's not too appealing. He'll flashback Faithless Looting, and John Rosum could not be quicker on the Negate.
Yeah.
And Silas' deck helping out Rosum here for a bit. Rosum goes to 12. That draw for the turn was not a spell. It was a land, so Thing in the Ice stays at 1.
Yeah, that blank draws up a huge deal. Now let's see if Rosum can produce a Supreme Verdict here. That would be a best possible.
That would be a best possible.
Just over 2 minutes on the clock.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine Rosum closing the game, but big check to see if he can keep playing it here.
Yeah, right now even Lyra Dawnbringer wouldn't do very much because of how close that thing in the ice is to transforming.
Yeah. Any spell would mean the thing would transform. Waltzer would pick up the Swift Spear, recast it, get in for 8. I don't know if we're talking a little bit about what phase of the game we're at. I don't know if it's maybe a life total discrepancy, but players settling something here. Seeing the things being gestured at being lands and this exiled lightning helix, I think it's got to be a life total issue.
Okay, so they're going to confirm life totals. Yeah, let me know about the clock.
Presumably a time extension will come with that confirmation.
Yeah, judge has stopped the clock for this judge. Yeah, they're confirming life totals, and we will make sure that they're agreed upon. It is at 8 and 16 are the correct life totals.
Any spell here lethal, but that's just another land for
Oh.
Waltzer. Yikes.
Can Rosum hit it? No, he's drawing a land too. I mean, if this keeps going, it's fine. Here's Opt by Silas Waltzer. Opt transforms thing in the ice. Maybe Rosum's hoping he'll play around Settle the Wreckage.
Yeah, I guess. All he has to do is recast Swift Spear, attack with both creatures. You're threatening lethal. If there was a cryptic command, there's nothing you can do about it. That's already going to be so bad.
And he's going to go farther. It's going to be Swift Spear, Faithless Looting. Into Shard of Course, Faithless Looting, discards 2 lands. This is going to be enough. Well, is it Phoenix? Looking strong for the second week in a row. And Rosum is out of answers and out of life points. Silas Waltzer moves to 3-0.
Yeah, and sort of at the end of the game there, you saw Waltzer, he summoned a little bit, drew some lands.